This video tutorial is compatible with Photoshop CC and Photoshop CS6. There is a flare filter inside of Photoshop, but we can create a more realistic flare effect by using flare that was actually captured in camera, and then we can import it and place it on a separate layer and maneuver it into position. Okay, let's start by coming to the File menu and coming down to Place. We can now browse in my operating system in order to find one of the flare files I've created in camera. I'm going to choose a vertical file for this vertical image, and it's number 17, and we've got this big strong flare effect. I'm going to try and get this and reposition it so it's coming through the window behind the guy. So we'll hit place. Now it's coming a little bit low and it's off to the right hand side, so I'm just going to right click inside of this bounding box and choose Flip Horizontal. We can now set about scaling this flare file. I'll just resize it to fit the host image. And now, because we can't actually see where the window is, we're just going to drop the opacity in the layers panel down to around about 80–85% or so. We're going to need to zoom out in order to relocate or resize this flare file. Okay, I'm just going to hit Command minus a couple of times, or Control minus on a PC, and then grab the bounding box corner handle here and drag that so the flare is directly inside of the center of that window here before hitting the commit transformation icon. Okay, and now we'll zoom back in a couple of times. Okay, let's try and set the opacity now back to 100%, and the mode needs to be switched to screen mode. Okay, and now we're getting that flare effect coming beautifully in through that window and over the guy. We can actually perfect the tonality. We're just losing perhaps a little bit of the contrast. That does tend to happen with flare in camera, but I'd just like to restore a little bit more of the deeper values of this image. So we're going to come in with a levels adjustment, and then I'm just going to hit the auto levels here in order to restore some of that extra contrast there. Okay, I'm going to return to the layers panel now, and I'm going to put a layer mask on this flare layer here. So just click on the add layer mask icon there, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask back some of the flare on this guy's face just to restore a little bit more localized contrast down the center of this image. So I'm going to select the brush tool from the tools panel, black as the foreground color. I'm going to set my brush to 0% hardness, and I'm going to lower the opacity down to around about 30 or 40% or so. Now with a large brush I'm just going to restore some of that detail to the center of that face and maybe down to that shoulder and arm there. And we can just reduce the size of that brush and just restore a little bit more of the localized contrast. If that's inappropriate, we could just cycle back through the histories. That's Command Option Z or Control Alt Z, and perhaps use a larger brush this time, perhaps with the opacity dropped even further back, and just to restore there. That's a bit better. And now we're getting the sort of localized contrast down the central portion of that face that I'm looking for. Okay, so that completes that project. We're going to look at another way of applying a flare effect. This time we're going to use this file here of a surfer, and we're going to combine two lens flare effects in order to create the look we're trying to achieve here. And so again, we're going to come to the File menu and choose Place. Instead of from my vertical folder, I'll come to my horizontal folder now, and I'll choose the number 1 here. Okay, some beautiful colors and also the light source in that top left hand corner, and that should suit the image because we've got a light source that is in the coming from the left hand side of this image. So we're just going to reposition that so it fits the host image before hitting the commit option. Now I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut for the screen blend mode here. As long as we don't have a painting tool selected, and I do actually have one at the moment, so I'll just press the V key and that will select the move tool. Any tool that's not a painting tool will suffice in order to activate the blending modes for layers rather than the painting brush tools. So we're going to go Option Shift S for screen, and that puts the layer into the screen blend mode. And then I'm just going to press the 7 key to drop the opacity of this layer to 70%, because we're actually going to combine this lens flare with a second file, so the strength is going to build. Okay, let's come back to the file menu, choose Place again, and this time we're going to come to the Flare 5. This has got some nice circular artifacts coming through in a diagonal form here, and we'll hit Place. Okay, and again resize this to fit the host image before hitting the Commit Transformation. Okay, and again we'll use that keyboard shortcut, Option or Alt on a PC, Shift and then S for screen. And again press the 7 key to drop that back to 70% opacity for this layer. And again we're going to come in with the auto levels here, so we'll select the levels adjustment layer. There are a couple of options for auto, so you can just hold down the Alt or Option key and click on auto, and these brings up the auto color corrections options. Now I'm choosing to favor the new enhanced brightness and contrast option here, and I'll set that as the radio button. I'll also set it as the save as defaults and then select OK. Okay, and now we can click on that auto and apply that, and now we're going to come back to our layers panel. Now we have a mask automatically applied to the levels adjustment layer, and I'm liking the extra contrast applied by the auto levels throughout most of the image except the bottom right hand corner. I do want that weaker in contrast down here, so instead of masking the flare layers, I'm going to actually mask the adjustment. So again we'll come to the brush tool. I'll raise the opacity to perhaps around about 80 or 90%. Using a nice soft edge brush, just going to brush that down into that bottom right hand corner to shield the levels or the auto levels adjustment. Okay, and that evens out the contrast nicely. Okay, now we can actually create some color distortions or color grading inside of this levels, and one of the things that I like to do to create sort of an aged effect for a photograph is to come to the blue channel and just lower the output level slider there, just to create some yellowing of the warm tones, and that sort of fits with the sunlight coming through this image. And we can also make the shadows a little bit bluer just by dragging the output levels a little bit higher as well. And we can do some more grading, perhaps using the green channel and also the red channel here. Perhaps I'll just move the gamma value a little bit just to make it a little bit warmer. And perhaps we'll come in with a vibrance slider and just raise some of the saturation of these colors, perhaps some healthy amount of vibrance and a little bit of saturation as well, just to kick in those warmer tones. Okay, and that sort of completes the process. Now this whole process is actioned, and these actions can be downloaded from markgaler.com. The advantage of using the actions from the Mark Galer website is not only do you get the files just for this project, but you'll get a collection of 40 flare files, 20 verticals and 20 horizontals to apply over your projects.